Oh, so we got 20 people here. Okay. I didn't know if we had anybody.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our virtual program dealing with a stamp collection. Tonight we're joined by Mike. He is an antiques and collectibles pro with over 40 years under his belt of dealing in antiques and collectibles. We're so excited to learn about stamp collections from him. I know absolutely nothing. So hopefully he will answer a lot of questions. Because this is a webinar, we do need to have our questions put into either the Q&A or the chat on your screen. And then I'm happy to read them at the end to sort of help facilitate that. But without further ado, I will mute myself and I'll let you take it away, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Marty. Thanks for coming out, guys. It looks like we got well over 30 people. A lot of people must have a stamp collection, one place or another. But I would argue that stamps are the world's truest collectible, in the sense that people generally have collected stamps because they like collecting stamps, not necessarily from the value perspective, because most stamps aren't worth that money, with that much money. Tonight's program should go about an hour, and what my objective is there's no way I'm going to make you an expert in 1 hour. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I'm not an expert by any means. I'm a collector with some decent knowledge, but what my objective is not to make you an expert within the hour, but if you've inherited a collection, you have a stamp collection, just getting started with collecting stamps, to give you a better idea of where you're at, and within an hour, hopefully, you're going to know a bit more. To give you some background, I am right now in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour outside of Philadelphia. I think this is the fourth program we've done for your library over the last 3 or 4 months. I'm an appraiser, and my job as an appraiser is to help people understand the value of what they've got. I'm an auctioneer, and what an auctioneer basically does is help people turn what they no longer want or need into cash. But I can talk real fast if I have to. I've written a book called Home Downsizing in 4 Easy Steps, and this is what I do. I help people deal with their house and estate contents. I got the radio show in Philadelphia called What's It Worth? Ask Mike the Appraiser. Right now, we're only doing it the first Friday of the month. For 10 years, I did it every Friday, but I've kind of semi-retired. But tonight, we're going to be talking about dealing with a stamp collection. Real quick, I'll go through a real quick history. We got about 75, 80 slides, so I've got to go fairly quickly, but talk about what's wrong with stamps, because stamps are not what I would call a hot collectible today. We're going to go through some basics. We'll go through some different types of collections, collectors, to help you figure out perhaps what kind of collection you've inherited and what kind of collection you're dealing with. We'll talk a little bit about value, how you determine value, how you sell value. I'll give you a few resources. I'll give you a few vignettes. And like I said, by the time we're done in an hour or so, hopefully you're much more acquainted with stamps than you were at the beginning of the program. Give you a little background. Postage stamps didn't occur until 1840. The first usable postage stamp was issued in England, Great Britain. It was called the black penny, and it was 4 penny, and it was black and white. But the problem with this stamp was most cancellations were black. So when they put black over black, it didn't show up. So probably right around 1841, Great Britain switched over to the red penny. Same look, Queen Victoria, a young Queen Victoria, but it was in red because that made the black cancellation show up better, so people couldn't reuse the same stamp over and over again. First stamps issued in the U.S. were around 1847. You got the 5-cent stamp, Franklin, the 10-cent stamp, Washington. Most of the early stamps were Franklin and Washington for like the first 5 or 10 years or so. These things are not worth a ton of money. We just sold a Franklin unused stamp on eBay recently. It sold for $99.95 or something like that. So $100 for the first stamp is not that much money. I've never had an original 10-cent stamp. Both of these stamps have been widely reproduced. You want to be careful of that, but they can be pretty good money. 1893 was the first commemorative U.S. stamp. So now we've gone from 1847 to 1993. All of a sudden, the Postal Service starts commemorating events. This first one in 1893 commemorated the 1893 Columbian exhibition. I believe it was in Chicago. And they came out with a series of stamps for 1892, 1893, primarily Columbus, or dealing with the landing of Columbus in the United States. And then over the years, they've gone on and issued a whole ton of commemorative stamps, including commemorating specific people, places, things, events, things like that. For a while, the recipient paid postage. The sender did not. I wanted to send a letter to you. I sent the letter through the post office. You got the letter with the postage due stamp on. You had to pay to get the letter. That didn't last all that long entirely. Early on, you've all heard of the Pony Express. A lot of people don't know what it was for. The whole purpose of the Pony Express was to carry mail from basically St. Joseph, Missouri, or somewhere like that, all the way across the western part of the U.S. into California. And I just like this ad. The Pony Express wanted young, skinny, wiry fellows, not over 18, have to be young, have to be an expert rider, willing to risk death daily, orphans preferred. And you got paid $25 a week for that privilege of carrying the mail cross country. Pony Express didn't last that long, only a couple of years, because it was replaced by the Transcontinental Railroad. It was a lot faster and safer to send the mail cross country via the railroad rather than the Pony Express. My understanding, last I looked, there were somewhere around 650 different countries. Many of them are no longer in existence or they've been absorbed by other countries, but 650 different countries. 450,000 stamps every year worldwide. There's more than 12,000 stamps issued and more than 5,000 stamps issued in the U.S. Over the years. So there's a lot of stuff to accumulate. And trust me, we're going to be saying this over and over again. Most stamps have little or no value whatsoever. Well, what's wrong with stamps today? Well, stamps were never really intended to be an investment. They were, like I said earlier, they were the truest collectible. I mean, here's an ad. You could buy 200 US stamps for $1. Here's another one. You can buy a bag of 200 worldwide stamps for $1. As a kid, I used to read comic books. On the back page of every comic book was an ad. You could buy and back in the 60s, you could buy 1,001 stamps for $0.10. That's how they tried to get people involved in stamp collecting. But the real reason is most stamps have little or no value outside the postage value. Another thing that's wrong with stamps today, there are fewer collectors, especially the younger collectors. As the older collectors who are serious are passing on, retiring, no longer collecting stamps, there's not enough young people who are interested in them. I joke with people at some of my classes. I do what's it worth appraisal events, and people will bring a stamp book. And I'll say, tell you what, how'd you like me to take you to the fountain of youth? You and I will go to a stamp auction and we'll be the youngest ones in the room. And I'm talking people my age in the 70s on up. But the bottom line is there are very few, I'm not saying none, but there are very few relatively young collectors who collect stamps today. Stamp collecting it takes time. I mean, you have to, and you're going to see some of the books that we're going to talk about, stock books and albums, and it takes time to mount them and look at them and research them. It's a labor of love for not a whole lot of money. Trust me. I would much rather, from a financial perspective, collect coins than stamps if I'm looking to make money. Most stamps are low denominations. So you got to do a lot of work to make a little money. If I told you I have an investment for you that you could make 50 to 100 times face value, 50 to 100 times over what you pay for it, you jump at the opportunity. You buy stock at $100, it'd be nice to make 100 times that. How hard do you want to work to buy a stamp for a penny and sell for 50 cents or sell for $1? So it takes a lot of money because most stamps are lower value denominations. I hear people all the time say, Mike, I've got a stamp collection that's they're over 100 years old. Trust me, 100 years old is not rare. There's a lot of those stamps out there. And the problem is every young boy and girl back in the early 20th century collected coins and or stamps. What are they doing today? They're watching TV. They got their movies. They're playing video games, Game Boys, whatever else. They're on social media. There are very few young people care about stamps. So as a result, they're just not bringing what they used to. Also, there's a lot of people out there right now. Wow, we've got 80 people in this program right now. I'll bet you some of you have collected or inherited a stamp collection and you don't know what to do with it. You don't understand the value of what to do with it. Well, that's why we're here tonight. But it's true. A lot of people just don't understand stamps. Uh, email is meaning fewer stamps. People are sending fewer letters. I sometimes buy stamp collections that include letters that were done in the 1800s, and the handwritten letters with the pen and ink and the flowing words are so different than emails today. Email means there's fewer stamps being issued. You got stamps.com today versus traditional stamps and all. So let's talk a little bit about the basics of postage stamps. If you're going to be working with these things, these aren't absolutely necessary for what you're going to be doing, but they're certainly not bad tools to have. You want some tweezers. They're going to help you move stamps in and out of some of the albums, pick them up. But what you don't want is the sharp tweezers that you might have used from your medicine cabinet to remove splinters. A sharp tweezer may puncture a stamp, put a hole in it. Magnifying glasses are nice. Most houses have these handheld magnifying glasses. You could go to Amazon and get a 10x for $10 or something like that. Most stamps you come across are going to be either hinged in an album or in these plastic sleeves in the album. Early stamps are not imperfect, but imperforated. There's no perforations like they are in this one. Most later stamps have perforations, and then you might need a perforation gauge to determine whether it's 11 or 12 perf. Well, the difference between one perf can sometimes mean double or triple the money. Let's go through some stamp collecting basics, okay? Do you have a collection or an accumulation? Huge difference in value. The picture on the left here, you got the closet, the cabinet. You've got maybe a dozen, 15 albums. You got boxes. This is a nicely organized collection. Think of a collection should be organized, whereas the accumulation is a mess. This is where somebody was just throwing stuff in a bucket. And where a lot of stamps came from over the years, guys, is people would take these stamps and then the stamps were made out of pretty rugged paper, and you could soak the corner of an envelope in some water, and the stamp will eventually peel off, and then you dry it and flatten it out, and you had a stamp for your collection. But a collection should be worth a lot more money than just an accumulation. Are you collecting U.S. or foreign? A lot of countries out there, a lot of countries that are no longer even there. I started collecting U.S. stamps. Now I collect 19th century foreign stamps. Are they new or used? We'll be talking about this. A stamp that's canceled is considered used. A stamp that's not canceled is unused. Any stamp going back to 1847, if it's not canceled, if it's not used, you can still use it as postage today. Now, you'd be foolish to use a stamp from 1847 for the postage value, but any stamp that's not canceled can still be used today. And I'm going to tell you about a 49-cent tool that will put a lot more money in your pocket. Okay, is the stamp used or unused? Again, you'll hear this term over and over tonight. Used means canceled, unused, uncanceled. You can still use stamps that are unused today. Okay, you may find your collection is in what we call Scott's albums. Scott's is the company that won out seemingly with the public for control of the stamp market. Minkus was one of the early ones. When I buy some early albums, I'll see some Minkus, Minkus albums. They don't seem to be around anymore. Scott's is the #1 name. And a serious collector would generally use a serious Scott's album. Amateur collectors use different kinds of albums. Whenever I see one of these modern postage stamp albums in red or blue, I never find anything good in there. These were almost always young kids' albums. Kids collected stamps, but they didn't have money to invest in stamps. They got stamps from aunts, uncles. Sometimes they had a connection at the post office that gave them used envelopes. Sometimes I've seen collections where somebody had a contact with a company that got international letters and envelopes coming in. When I'm looking for stamps, I would much rather find one of these circa 1900 stamp albums, because that means this collector was collecting right around 1900, 1910, 1890, and they had a lot easier access to the earliest stamps than these people who are collecting maybe in the 40s and 50s. In your collection, you'll probably find what we call stock books. Stock books are either books or sometimes they're bound books Sometimes they're loose individual pages that you put into a 3-ring binder or some other notebook, but they had rows, perfs where you can slide the stamps in. Stock books are generally temporary holding grounds. You might have 3 of the same stamp and you put it in the stock book until you would see which was the best stamp to add to your main album. But again, it's a lot of work when you're going to soak a stamp off an envelope, dry it out, put it in the stock book, and eventually put it in your other book, all for a penny stamp. So there's just not a ton of money in a lot of these things. All right, let's talk about some of the types of postage stamps you might come across. What you're going to see generally are what we call definitives. These are your day-to-day postage, your forever stamps. This was a 37-cent stamp, etc. Those are the day-to-day stamps. We talked a little bit about commemoratives. You'll see a fair number of commemoratives. These are just as usable for postage as the definitives, but the stamps over the years commemorated different things. You'll see individual stamps. I'm telling you, individual stamps most of them aren't worth that much money. If you go into eBay and put in, 2-cent Lincoln stamp from 1912, almost always you're going to see it sold amongst a group of other stamps. Very rarely do individual stamps bring much money. You might have heard the term stamp block. A stamp block is a group of 4, 6, 8, or 10 stamps. Usually it's 4, though, that are connected at the perfs or connected somehow that are still together. Okay. They used to bring more money than they do, but in this case, as far as I'm concerned, this thing is worth 12 to 15 cents. If you heard the term plate block, it's the same thing. It's a block, except a plate block has a number in the selvage. This all had to do with the printing process and all that. So you got individual stamps, you got blocks, you got plate blocks, you got sheets. You'll see sheets anywhere from 20 stamps, 50 stamps. Sometimes the smaller stamps were issued in sheets of 100. A sheet that's in good condition should bring more money than the sum of the individual stamps. Then later on, you've got the booklets. I remember we used to be able to go to the postal line and get one of these things, or sometimes get it out of a machine. And then later on, there were the Coils stamps. I don't find these being all that collectible anymore, but again, as long as it's not canceled, you can still use it for postage. Then there's service stamps. There's a lot of other stamps that people collect. Airmail stamps. I'm not even sure when airmail started. I'm going to say 1918, give or take a little bit, but some people collect airmail stamps. Most of them are a dime a dozen. There's so many of them out there. I had a guy, we did a what's the worth appraisal event this week, and a gentleman brought in a whole book of postage airmail stamps. None of them were canceled. It was in great shape. And I told him it was $50. He said, I thought it would be worth a lot more. And I turned to the Zeppelin page, and he didn't have any of the 3 Zeppelin stamps. That's where the money is. Those would have had the biggest value. So airmail stamps, they're collectible, not huge money. Postage due stamps, there's different designs, different tones, different colors, red, maroon, brown. All of those are going to be collectible a certain way. There's special delivery stamps, things like that. So all these different types of stamps that people collect. I love personally revenue stamps, and they don't bring much money at all. Revenue stamps were used to indicate that a government tax had been paid. You'll see, I think liquor and alcohol revenue stamps are fairly collectible. Telegraph, what do people care about telegraph stamps today? Nobody even knows what a telegraph is. At least younger kids don't know what the telegraph is. There was a tax on playing cards, so you might see some playing card revenue stamps in your collection. Every time stock was transferred, there would have been a stock documentary stamp there. This is an inland exchange stamp. $1 tax was paid. This would have been from the 1800s. One area I think might be more collectible, if you have any of these, watch out for these, is marijuana stamps. Because now that marijuana is becoming more and more collectible in various states, I have a feeling the collectability of marijuana items is going to increase, and there's not a whole lot of legal marijuana stamps out there. Okay, you might also see these other things, a first day cover. Okay, a first day cover stamp will oftentimes say first day of issue. And this is the first day this particular stamp came out. The first day cancellation will cancel a stamp. Sometimes you'll see some of the earlier first day issues without a cachet. When you see pictures like this, that's called a cachet. Some of them are fairly collectible. Most of them aren't. I'm telling you, based on my experience, the first day covers today, you're lucky to get 10 cents unless it's something really special. There are city pre-cancels. So sometimes they issue these things in various cities. There's people who collect just New York City pre-cancel, Buffalo, New York pre-cancels. That means these didn't have to be stamped at the post office because they were already canceled at the post office. Early on, you'll see some postal cards. Early 1800s, early 1900s cards are going to be a lot more collectible than later ones, and there are different people pictured up here. You can date your postal card by just going to the internet or using Google Lens and figuring out who this person is, and will back you into the period when it was used. Postcards. Some people buy postcards more so for the stamps on the back than the image on the front. Cancellations. There's some people who collect oddities, odd cancellations. I mean, most cancellations are pretty ugly, but some post offices had more creative things, and I've seen people who had collections of odd cancellations. Sometimes you'll see these indicias. Each one marks a different period of time. Over in Great Britain, the first indicias, I believe, were the 1840s. So there's money out there. So people were error stamps. So lots of things to collect. Most aren't going to bring all that much money. So here's a tip for you. We've talked about it a couple of times, but unused stamps can still be used for postage. All you need is one thing. Go to Staples, buy a glue stick. I have good glue stick in almost every room. And what I do is when I buy collections of stamps, uh, I can peel them off the envelope and just use a glue stick, put them on. As long as they're not canceled, your postage will get where you intend it to go. All right, let's talk about some of the types of collections that you might come across. Some people collect a little bit of everything. First day covers, definitives, blocks, plate blocks, anything they want. Some people only collect US. That's probably the majority of people in this country collect only US stamps. Other people collect US and foreign or just foreign. I bought a collection not long ago. A gentleman had been ill for a while, and while he was sick and confined to the house, he collected stamps. That kept him going. His family heritage was from Hungary. He collected Hungarian stamps. He had a great collection of Hungarian stamps. Some people collect specific types, animals, flowers, presidential stamps, famous people, things like that. Some people collect primarily revenues, first day covers. There's a collector for everything out there, just not as many collectors as there were before. Overall, you're going to see 5 different types, in my opinion, of stamp collectors. Now, I'm referring to what you've inherited. Some collections are really not collections, they're just accumulations, not worth a ton of money, especially canceled accumulations. If they're not canceled stamps, you can soak them off. You want to go through the trouble, you can soak them off the paper and reuse them with your glue stick. But accumulation is not going to bring that much money. Then there's youthful collections. That's generally where I see these red modern postage stamp albums. These are generally kids' albums. Kids didn't have money to invest. Kids got stamps from the 1001 stamps for a dime on the back of the comic book, or those bags of 200 stamps, or mom and dad at work would bring them stamps. But you're going to see average, common, used stamps in these albums almost always, unless you get lucky. Most stamp collections are the average collections. Generally, they're going to be mostly used stamps, some unused stamps here and there, nice variety. Condition is going to be vary, but they're going to be fairly well organized in stamp albums. Then you might see the serious collector. In coins, a coin collector is called a numismatist. A stamp collector is called a philatelist. Now, like I said, I like these early albums. If you got some early albums like these, pay attention to them, because if this stamp album was from 1890, 1900, you're going to see a lot higher percentage of 19th century stamps. You won't see any 20th century stamps here because this was accumulated or collected before 20th century stamps came out. So you look for these things. And what you hope to see is a collection of an advanced, a serious collector. This is the collector who had the best albums, stored in the best condition. You have the best stamps. These are those Zeppelins I was telling you that the guy missed in his collection. This 65-cent Zeppelin, I got a couple in my collection. They used to sell for $100, $150. They're bringing $20 or $25 on eBay today. But another rule of thumb with stamps is the higher the value, Not always, but usually the higher the value, the rarer the stamp, because people would have used a lot more 65-cent stamps than $2.60 stamps, especially in the 30s. Stamps that have been graded, you can send your stamps out and have them authenticated and graded by professional grading companies. Here they're telling us this particular stamp is USA Scott's number 800. It's violet. It's 1937 3 center. And they're basically saying this stamp is mint. It's perfect. There's nothing wrong with this. And then what they do is they encapsulate it amongst plastic so your hands can't touch it again. So when you go to sell these kind of stamps on eBay, if Mike of Anchorage says it's Gem 100, nobody's going to know who I am, or they're not going to believe me. But when you have the stamp grading company telling people that it's a Gem 100, you have a much better chance of getting a top dollar. So you're going to see various types of stamp collections, and hopefully you have this serious stamp collection, because that's where the money will be. Okay, you got the stamp collection. What do you do with it? How do you sort it? Well, first thing I will do when I buy something, I just bought a stamp collection. If you know what legal document boxes are, there's a white paper, heavy duty cardboard with a lid. I bought a collection that had about 70 or 80 boxes, and each box had 5 albums. I mean, I bought a ton of stamps. And in it were some serious collection stamps. I think that was the guy's collection. And there were some very average albums that probably the guy bought at auction. He probably bought a whole bunch of stuff at auction, picked out cherry picked the 2 or 3 or 4 stamps he needed, and then just tried to sell the others. So you'll see albums, you'll see stock books of all type. Some stock books can be really good. Out of this collection I just bought, there's some great 19th century stamps, and he's got many of them. And so I'm going through those stamps. I want the ones that are unused, because they're going to bring more money than the ones that are used. But most things in a stamp and a stock book aren't going to bring a ton of money. Obviously, look for sheets. We love sheets, especially higher value sheets from a usable perspective. Then I try to sort the stamps by country. If you have a worldwide album, that's going to be probably 50 or 60 countries in one album. That's a little tougher to separate. But once you get to the higher level, Scott says might have an album just for Hungary. I've got a collection here that's got 3 German albums. So it's got 3 Swiss albums, 3 Netherlands albums. They're generally like 1850 to 1900, 1900 to 1950, 1950 to current date, etc. So you sort them by country. You want to sort things by type. You want to break out the stamps from the first day covers. You want to separate the revenue stamps from the definitive and the commemorative postage stamps. Then you want to start sorting used versus unused, because if it's still unused, you could use them. What I do when I buy a stamp collection right now, I like the 37-cent stamps because postage is 73 cents. So I can put 237s on an envelope, and it's going to get there just as equally. And I didn't pay that money at the post office. I bought it from a collection paying less. All right, how do you determine the value of your collection? Well, obviously, like anything else, value is going to depend on the demand. What kind of demand on there is for that particular stamp? Now, the dilemma we've got today is with fewer collectors, there's less demand for stamps. Some stamps have pretty good demand, most don't. Now, to make things even worse, as the years are going on, we seem to have far fewer collectors, which means we've got far less demand on stamps. So stamps in most stamp areas is a shallow area of collectible. Not a ton of people looking for them today. And yet, if you go into eBay, and let's say you've got U.S. Revenue stamps from 1890. Well, you sort them by 1890 on eBay. You go to the sold stamps. You're going to see some pretty good numbers. There's people still buying stamps, just not as many. And it's a lot harder to sell an individual stamp. Usually you have to sell a grouping or a collection of similar stamps to make it worthwhile. Now, value is also dependent on supply. How many are out there? The fewer stamps, in theory, like I said, usually a rule of thumb is the higher the value of the stamp, the fewer will be out there. But rarity means nothing if there's not the market out there of people looking for that particular stamp. So it gets kind of a little complicated there. What's going to determine the value? Well, is it a postage stamp? Coins. With coins, for example, you have face value coinage, stuff that's in your pocket or purse, versus numismatic coins, coins that have additional value over and above the face value because of the year, the mint mark, and the condition. Same thing with stamps. You've got the postage value. An unused 10-cent stamp, I don't care for what year it is still always worth no less than 10 cents if you can still use it for postage. Whereas the philatelic stamp may be worth significantly more based on the year, the type of stamp, hinged, unhinged, original glue, etc. All right, don't make the mistake of going to the Scott's catalog and looking up value, thinking your value is that. It is not. Now here, if you got this is a 112 Franklin. Let's take this one right here. This was, I believe, the first Pony Express writer. I think this was one of the first stamps that didn't have a famous person's face on it, if I'm not mistaken. They're telling us that one here, mint condition is worth $425. Used condition is 75. There's no way in the world you're going to get $75 for a used Scott's 113 Pony Express Rider stamp. So don't pay attention to these. Usually what price guides, value guides mean is this is not what your stamp is worth. This is what you might expect to pay for a stamp in very good condition, buying it from a dealer's inventory. And yours is not worth that kind of money unless you're a stamp dealer. What I do is I like to look at this because I look at the book values. I don't pay attention to them. I look at it, see, well, how rare is what I've got. But I want to find out what it's worth. I'm going to go to eBay and I'm going to put in an 1899 Franklin Scott's number 112 US stamp. And then what's going to show up on eBay first is how many are currently available for sale, not value. Value does not equal an asking price. Value is a sold price. So I'm going to take it a step further, go into eBay sold prices, and I want to see what they're actually selling for. That's how you're going to determine the value of your stamps as far as I'm concerned. I don't pay any. I've got the Scott's albums. I pay attention to the type of stamp, the image. It helps me identify things. I pay no attention to the value. So again, book value is what you should expect to pay, not the liquidation value. A country is going to be important. Obviously, certain countries are going to be more collectible than others. Russia, Israel, England, a lot of stamp collectors there versus some of these other countries that are no longer even around. And if I ask, right now we have 89 people in the program, and if I asked you what is the most populous country in the world, probably most of you would still say China, and it's not. India is now the most populous country in the world. They've surpassed China in terms of population. But that also tells me there's a lot of people out there collecting Indian stamps because there's money there. There's a lot of people. So every country is not equal. It depends on how many serious collectors, stamp collectors are left there. Age is going to be important. It's pretty obvious. The first 1847 stamps are going to be worth a lot more than the forever stamps that are issued by almost the billions. The design is important. People love these Zeppelin stamps. There's another Zeppelin stamp out there that doesn't bring as much as these, but the design is going to be important. What's the denomination? I mentioned this already. In all likelihood, a ton more 1-cent stamps were printed than $5 stamps. So in theory, the higher the denomination, the fewer were printed. Theoretically, all condition aspects being equal, the higher value stamp should bring more than the lower value stamp. Are they hinged? I mean, back in the day, hinges were the way collectors posted their stamps in their albums. But a hinge is something that was like a little piece of paper. It was glued, and you would lick it on one side to have it stick to the back of the stamp, and then you would lick it again to put it and have it stick into the album. Well, that's great, but a collector today will pay more for an unhinged stamp with original gum, they call it, not glue, but they call it gum. They'll pay far more, maybe double, for an ungummed stamp, original, than something that was partially hinged. The worse the condition, the lower the value. Is it full gum or partial gum? Again, same thing. They'll pay more for a stamp that has original gum, meaning was never hinged, never stuck in an album, than they will for one that's like this. Even if the fronts are the same, the backs mean a lot to collectors. Watermarks are not something I think you should worry about at this stage of collecting if you're dealing with an inherited collection, but most stamps have watermarks and they're going to help to determine authenticity as well as value. But I'm not even going to get into that here. Color is hugely important. Stamps that are faded, stamps that have been in water with maybe soaking off the stamp. Look at these 5-cent Franklins. The one on top has significantly better color than the one on the bottom. Same stamp, both unused. The one on top will bring significantly more than the one on the bottom. Centering. If you collect baseball cards, you know how important centering is. You would think when you open up a pack of baseball cards, everything's in mint condition. It's not. It's not in perfect condition because these things were hand cut. The same thing with stamps. Look at this Golden Gate, 20 cents, Niagara, 25, the Bison, 30 cents. These are basically perfect stamps. Look how perfectly centered they are. There is nothing wrong with these stamps. Okay, down at the bottom, you got this $2.60 Zeppelin. Well, look how it's uneven. The sides seem to be fairly symmetrical, but the bottom edge is bigger than the top edge. And look at this 3-cent Washington stamp with the huge. These are the centering means a whole lot when it comes to value. People will pay more for a perfect stamp than ones that's not quite perfect. And condition obviously means a lot. Stamps that are badly blurred, creased, torn, are going to be worth practically nothing in most cases. Okay, also the grading. You can have your stamps sent out like this one right here. This was the US number 298. It's a 1901 8-cent stamp. They give you the color. This one is not graded Gem 100 like the other one was. This is very fine to extra fine 85. But it's encapsulated in hard plastic, so you can sell it that way. When you send your stamps out to be graded, they basically do two things. They authenticate it and they give it a grading factor. They do not put a value on it. These grading companies will not value it because values change too often. But now when you put this stamp up on eBay, the company is saying it's graded 85 on a scale of 1 to 100. Not you, the seller, because sellers are almost always going to overgrade their stamps. Okay, let's talk about valuing stamps a little bit. We talked about this. You got the stamps catalog. Don't pay any attention to the values in there other than for guidance, but don't think your stamp is going to be worth that much money. It's not. I go to eBay. As far as I'm concerned, that's the first place I'm going to go because value is, and I go to eBay sold prices, not eBay asking prices. Sold price equals value. If I was selling, if I was a realtor selling a house, I don't pick a number out of the air. I look for what have houses in that neighborhood sold for recently. Same thing with your stamps. We don't care what these stamps sold for in 1995, 1975, or 1955. What are they selling for today? eBay will tell you because eBay sold prices only gives you value from the last 3 months. Don't know what it's worth? Go to a stamp shop. See what they're selling them for. You're not going to get that price because they're a dealer. You're not. But at least it'll give you an idea of how valuable or how collectible the stamp is. Maybe you could just take your stamp to a dealer, take your stamp collection to a show, or visit a stamp dealer's store and work with them. But understanding that if you sell to a dealer, the dealer's not going to pay you what they're worth. Dealer's got to pay you a wholesale price because then they've got to do all the work in sorting and selling than you will. So if you want top dollar, you better be prepared to do it all yourself. I'm not sure what it's worth. You can hire an appraiser. But there's a difference. There's a huge difference. If you hire me to appraise your collection of stamps, I'm going to give you an honest opinion of value. You may or may not like the number I give you, but you know I'm not going to try and buy it from you. Whereas when you go to the dealer is not giving you technically an appraisal. The dealer is giving you what they're willing to pay for it. And there's a huge difference there. So understand that when you sell to somebody else, you're going to probably get a wholesale price and not the full retail price. Now, I just like this. I read this in one book. Here's how one expert says the value of a collection. Ignore everything that's got low value. Ignore anything that's not in great condition. Ignore anything fakes or reprints. Add the remaining value divided by 10, and you're probably still going to be high because most stamps just don't have a lot of individual value. All right, you got this collection. You kind of spent some time sorting out. You're probably getting tired of it already because there's so much work trying to figure out what's there. How do you sell these things? Well, one option is you sell privately to a dealer. You want that dealer to take it all. They'll give you a price. They're probably going to pay you for the ones they want. If I'm buying a collection, I prefer not to take everything because stamps are heavy. They're like books. They can be very heavy. But you want them gone, make them take everything for that one price, move on with your life, let the expert figure out what to do with it. Or you could have them cherry pick it. That means coming in, taking the best and leaving you with the rest. I suggest you don't do that because once a dealer has come in and cherry picked the best out of your collection, nobody wants the junk. Nobody wants it. You can take your things to a stamp auction. There are a lot of auction houses that sell stamps. They either sell exclusively stamps, they might sell periodic, like a regular auction house might have one or two stamp auctions a year, while the rest of the weeks they sell other things. Some auctioneers include a portion of stamps in their weekly sale. The beauty of a stamp auction, you may or may not like the price, but at least your things are being sold in front of knowledgeable stamp collectors, at least in theory. I would much rather have my stamps sold at a stamp auction rather than having my stamps sold at a doll auction or having my stamps sold at a tool auction because there's no stamp buyers at a doll or tool auction. So you want to have your stamps sold through a stamp auction if that's the way you're going to go. We talked about the dealer. Dealers are entitled to make money. And with stamps, they're going to work on this. Trust me, they're going to work on a much smaller payment percentage. You know, if I could buy a firearm, or if I can buy a coin, or I could buy a good piece of art that I know I could flip in a couple of days, I might pay 80 or 90% of value. But I have to sit on something and work with it and post it and all this other stuff. I might pay 10 cents on the dollar. So a stamp dealer will pay you more for a high-end collection than they will for an average collection if they'll even take it. You want top dollar? Do it yourself. Put it on eBay. Open up an eBay store and try and sell stamps individually, or maybe sell them by the country or by the grouping or something like that. You describe it, you photo, you put it up, you negotiate. You'll get more money if you do it yourself. Or take them to a flea market, rent a table, have a garage sale, list them on in your garage sale ad, selling a nice collection of stamps, including ABCDE. Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. I one time bought a collection of stamps from not the safest part of Philadelphia. And it sounded good. I called the guy, sounded good. So I went, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I had a couple $1,000 cash in one pocket, and I was carrying in the other pocket because I didn't know what would happen. And when I got to the house, he was the same way. He didn't know who was coming into his house. We had a great transaction, but a lot of people don't like buying and selling on Craigslist. Facebook Marketplace, same thing. You don't want strangers coming to your house. So you might want to advertise them on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. And then you meet them when you go to try and sell them behind the police station or in front of the Acme market or something like that. But the bottom line is, if you want top dollar, you better be willing and able to do the most amount of work. Don't want to do the work, can't do the work because you're working, you're too busy, you're tired, or rather golf. Always have to leave room for the other guy to make some money. I mean, a couple other thoughts here. Keep in mind that the catalog value in the price guides is almost always what you should expect to pay, not what your stamps are worth. Your liquidation value is totally different. Liquidation value is a tough thing. One of the things I look at when I go into eBay, I might put in a special delivery stamp 1902, 10 cents. Well, I might open up and I might see there's 800 of them currently available for sale. Well, that's not value. Then I'm going to go into the sold price and I might see that 10 of them have sold. If I see 10 stamps of what I'm looking for is sold in the last 3 months while there's 800 listed, that's a shallow collectible, man. There's not a whole lot of people buying those. I may not even waste my time putting them up unless what I've got is really good. Beware, US versus UN. I made this mistake one time. I was at a flea market and I saw sheets of perfect stamps and they were really cheap. And I didn't understand what he was doing. I was just looking at the postage value of them. And it wasn't until I got them home. This is when I first started collecting stamps. All of a sudden I realized they were UN stamps. They were not valid for US postage. They were only valid for shipping within the UN. So I think I probably still have most of those things tucked around here. So just be aware you're not buying UN stamps when you think you're buying US stamps. And one of the worst things you could do here is the fancier the packaging, usually the lower value of the stamp. You see these things on CVS and certain TV ads. We're going to sell you the collection of presidential homes. And they describe these things, and it comes in a perfectly sealed package. And what you're doing is you're paying $19.95 for basically 15 cents worth of postage. Okay. So you're never, ever, as far as I'm concerned, going to get a valuable, rare stamp in fancy packaging. You're better off buying a collection of stamps and looking for them that way. Most auctions have discount postage. I've been saying all along, you could still use stamps that aren't canceled for postage. Well, auction houses, stamp auction houses generally have discount postage lots. They might put in $300 worth of usable stamps and sell them for a fraction of what they're worth. Well, you're going to get a lot more money for the higher value stamps than the lower value stamps. So you've got $300 worth of postage of, in theory, 73-cent stamps. I know there's no such thing, but if people use them for post today, that's fine. I'll pay more for 37s, where I can put two of them on a stamp and mail it for the 73-cent postage. And yet, one time I did receive a package. I was like, somebody sent me a picture. The package was pretty large. They had over 300 low value stamps, 5 cents, 6 cents, 7 cents, that added up to the postage. It got there safely, but I don't want to sit there and lick 300 stamps to put them on a package. So discount postage will generally sell for a percentage of face value. Low value stamps, 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents, are generally going to sell for a really small percentage. Higher value stamps will sell at a higher value because you could still use those quite easily for postage. Some places you may want to look for outside. There's the American Philatelic Society. You could join. That's for stamp collectors. They have magazines and papers and all that other stuff. A lot of good resources there. You can find them on the internet. If you're going to keep your stamps, you might want to join. I'm sorry for the misspelling there. I just noticed that. The local stamp clubs. You can join a stamp club if you want to learn more about stamps. Or if you want to sell your stamps, maybe join a stamp club and try and sell your stamps to some of the people that are there. Or maybe take some pictures of your collection on your phone, go to a stamp show, stamp convention. Every area has stamp shows. Leave the stamps in your car, go around, show some people your phone with this as an example of the collection I'm trying to sell. You're interested in looking at it. Maybe they'll come outside and look in your car, and maybe you can just leave them there with them and sell them that way. Lynn's Stamp News is another resource. This is, I believe it's weekly or bi-weekly or monthly newspaper that just gives you the current information on stamps. But you got to be a pretty serious collector for that. Another option, I don't have it here, but auctionzip.com. Don't know, you're looking for an auctioneer to sell your stamps? Go to auctionzip.com. That's where every auctioneer in the country pretty much advertises. You go in the search box and you put US stamps, Italian stamps, Somalian stamps, whatever you're looking to sell, and see if you could back into an auctioneer who's selling those kind of stamps. If they are, they may be the right person to sell your stamps for you. There's a copy of Lynn's, and these shows are pretty good. You can buy. These dealers are there to sell, but dealers can't sell from an empty wagon. They've got to buy. So if you got the right collection at the right price, you might find a buyer for it at the show there. Here's a word for you. It's called retention. And it's a word that the government uses in their budget. And why does the government issue so many postage stamps? Because they love collectors, because we pay for a service they never use. We never use. We buy those stamps, those Elvis stamps, those Mother Teresa stamps. Oh, they're so cute. We keep them in our collection. We never use them. We pay the government for that service, and they haven't had to come through for it. They call that retention, and my understanding is that's even factored into the postal budget service. That's why they're always looking for the hottest stamps, things that people won't sell but hang on to. A couple of rules of thumb. I'm getting close to wrapping up here. Some basic rules of thumb. Most stamps are worth nothing, especially if they're canceled. Very few are worth more than face value. Most stamps have no value. Unused stamps, uncanceled stamps will almost always be worth more than used stamps, all things being equal. In collectible terms, earlier stamps are usually going to be more valuable than later stamps, meaning 1880 is going to be far more collectible, far more valuable than 1980. And yet, when you're talking in postage, discount postage terms, later stamps are going to be worth more than earlier stamps. Because later stamps are higher value. As postage rates have gone up, the size of the stamps have gone up. So you'll get more if you're selling a collection of 32, 34, 37, 41, 44 cent stamps than if you were 1, 2, 3, 5 cent stamps. Oh, as a rule of thumb, plate blocks will sell for more than individual stamps because you got total postal value. Sheets, same thing, will generally sell for more than blocks. And if it's unused, you could use it. I've got right now, I just have right next to me, I use this fairly regularly. I have a box in it. I don't know if I could just see it here, but I got my glue stick and I got stamps. And these things I just pay them on, and I have 33s and 25s, and that's how I'll use 325s to do a mailing. Couple examples here. I told you about the 1,001 stamps for a dime. That's how low value most stamps are. I guess they're still doing this. They certainly used to. They had dealer packs. Dealers would have mailing lists, and the dealer might send me a pack that had 50 stamps in it. And it says, take what you want, Mike, 10 cents a piece. When you're done with it, send us the money and forward the packet to the next person on the list. That's how little how much little value most stamps have. Because they never knew if they were going to get paid or not. But they got the dime on 1 penny stamp or half penny stamp, more power to you. And yet some people have no idea. I was one time went out, these daughters brought me out to the house because dad had a stamp collection. And they wanted to sell it. He needed the money. And it was one of those red albums. That's it. One red album that had nothing in it, hardly at all. And I think I offered them $100. And they were dumbfounded. They said, oh no, we need at least $5,000 for this. Well, they've still got it. I've also seen another person who had a huge collection. Now, this was not the collector. Dad died. Dad was a collector. The kids kept his collection in the basement. But guess what? The basement was damp, and the collection was down there for 10 years. And when they went to sell it, all stamps were stuck together. It was absolutely useless. So I guess that's another tip for you guys, is if you had a stamp collection to sell, don't hang on to it forever, because the longer you hang on to it, the greater the likelihood of damage, fire, water damage, whatever else. Another example was, it's usually the collector who understands value. You may have inherited a collection, but you don't know what it's worth. Dad, Mom, Uncle Harry, they probably knew what it was because they collected them. So my point here is know what you got before you sell it, not afterwards. In this one example, the kid took $10,000. He thought it was a great deal, and he actually gave away $90,000 that he could have gotten elsewhere if he had sold it at auction or whatever. Also, don't sell to the person telling you what it's worth. Don't sell to the appraiser, okay? And I see this with jewelry all the time. I'll go by a pawn shop. I'll drive by a we buy gold store. I'll buy a jewelry store. And in the window, there's a sign that says free appraisals. They're not giving you free appraisals. An appraisal is an opinion of value put forth by somebody who's not interested in acquiring what you've got. Those people, the jewelry store, the gold store, the pawn shop, they're not giving you an appraisal. They're giving you an offer to buy. Same thing here. You should not sell to the person telling you what it's worth. And lastly here, if you see these stamps, these were issued by the Commemoratives Society or something like that, 24 karat. They're not gold. You can't take them to the gold store and sell them for gold. Read the fine lines. Usually say that the surface is gold plated or something like that. Just be wary of that. So I'm going to wrap up. We've gone for 15 minutes here. I'll be happy to take some questions. I think Marty is still with us, and she has been checking the chat box. But if you need our appraisal help, give me a call, 215-264-4304. I deal with two types of people generally. Half the people I deal with don't know what it's worth, don't know what to do with it. I tell them in that case, they're better off hiring me to appraise it. But I also tell them you may or may not like the numbers I give you with my appraisal, but you have the comfort of knowing I'm not trying to buy it from you. It's an incentive for the appraiser to lowball it if they know they have a shot to buy it. Conversely, the other half of people say, I don't want to pay for the appraisal, I just want it gone. In those cases, I'm a potential buyer, but I tell them I'm not going to pay you the retail price. I've got to pay a wholesale price. Sometimes I can open up doors after I've done the appraisal. Sometimes people need to sell it. I can put them in touch with the right auctioneer or whatever. So, do you have any questions, stamps, anything else, coins? Give me a call. 215-264-4304. 215-264-4304. So with that said, Marty, I'm ready to kind of take any questions. Are you still there?
Yes, I am. So there are quite a few questions in the Q&A and in the chat. So somebody was asking about first day covers. I wasn't sure what that is.
Okay, we did cover first day covers. That's the first day a stamp is issued.
Okay.
And most covers aren't worth that much money. I mean, I just found one, most of them, like if it's President Lincoln, Ike Eisenhower, Mother Teresa, Susan B. Anthony, they're fairly common. But I've had one recently, it was worth about $35 because it had Admiral Byrd, and it was postmarked from the post office in the Antarctic. Has some values, a little bit out of the ordinary. So some first days, pardon my French here, I had another one from an odd place called Jackass Flats out in the western area. Those bring 10, 20, $30 because of the unusual name. But most first day covers don't bring that much. A first day cover with a cachet with the picture on the lower left side will usually do better than a first day cover that is just stamped first day of issue, unless it's from an interesting place. Another one I had, I sold the first day cover recently from the Hindenburg, and it was postmarked from the Hindenburg before it crashed in the 1930s.
There's another that's really amazing, actually. There's another question about the stamp. Is the stamp with the upside down plane still around?
Oh, it's
And when
around. If they
when was
call
the
the
last time
inverted,
one was sold and for how much?
I don't have the number in front of me. It's called the inverted Jenny. And what happens, that stamp had two colors. And so what they did was they put it through with one color through the printing press. And then when it came time to put it through the second color, they put it in the wrong way. So you had the plane upside down. They only had one sheet that there were a number of sheets before they caught it. They threw every sheet away, but apparently one got through, whether a postal employee stole it or got it out of there. It was sold privately for a few times, and then they broke it up. So all of a sudden, you have, instead of one sheet with 100 inverted jennies, you had 100 individual inverted jennies. And the last one sold, it was in the millions. I forget what it was. You could Google it and see what it is. But it's also been widely produced, and your chances of finding an original inverted jenny in your collection, you probably have a better chance of winning tonight's Powerball.
All right. Um, Someone else, Linda asked, what is the value of gold stamps?
Nothing. The face value, if you could still use them, unless they're not canceled. They're not gold. There was a marketing term. They're not gold stamps. You cannot take them to the gold store. They were just a different look. They're not going to bring much money at all.
Okay. Let's see what else. Karen is asking, are sheets of self-adhesive of value in terms of collector interest?
Self-adhesive? Nah, not really. They use them for postage. I mean, unless it's an error stamp, again, I'm not a stamp expert. I'm a collector. I can't think of one self-adhesive stamp that's worth more than the postal value.
There is another question from Diane. She says, I have a wonderful collection of canceled stamps that I started 40 years ago. My sister worked in accounts payable at an army base in Germany and saved them for me. One is from a submarine. Are unused 50-cent aerograms worth anything?
50 cents if you use an aerogram, I guess. I generally sell those things in groups. I mean, I don't know who buys aerograms. I put in group and eventually they sell, but they sell for far less than the combined face value. So it sounds like she has what I was talking about. You know, she had a contact who saved stamps from overseas, and at some point somebody would have had to put those stamps in water, get the stamp unattached from the paper, put it on a piece of paper with books on it to dry it out and flatten out, and then you have an unused stamp with no gum on the back. So there's value there. They could be, all depends on which stamps they are. But if I only collect US stamps, German stamps will have absolutely no value to me. So what she needs to do is find someone who knows and specializes in German stamps.
There's a question from Annika. The acceptable postcard sizes have changed. Is there a way to use old pre-printed postage paid postcards? Can you glue it to a larger card or cut the prepaid stamps out and glue them onto a larger postcard?
I'm not quite following that question, Marty.
Yeah, I'm unsure about that one as well. Sorry. Do World War II stamps from Germany have any value? That's from Diane.
Not really. I mean, I have, well, I mean, I can't put my hands on them right now, but all right, here. These are post World War One, okay? I don't know if you can see these or not. These are, I'm blocking them out here. These are German stamps, 1 million marks. This was during the 1919 to 1923 hyperinflation. To mail a stamp, it costs anywhere from 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, upwards of 1 million marks to mail a letter. That's how valueless the German currency was at that point in time. I think the same thing with World War II. So I got a ton of these things. They're not worth anything. They're curiosity pieces, but I don't think what she's going to have is worth that much money. If she's talking about German stamps, a lot of people think Hitler stamps are rare. They're not. Hitler was in power for 12 years. The monster had every stamp issued with his face on it in every country he occupied. There's millions of those stamps out there. They're worth very little.
Um, Robert asked about zip blocks, if they have any value.
What are they?
Zip blocks, ZIP blocks. I'm not sure.
I don't know what they are.
Okay.
Maybe he could, if he's still here, if he wants to clarify that in another chat, that'd be fine. I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay. Diane was asking if UN stamps have any value. It sounds like they don't from your comments, she says.
My understanding with UN, United Nations stamps, so they were good for mailing things only within the United Nations, one country to the other with United Nations business. You can't use them on US postage. So there's a few collectors out there, I'm sure. How do you find collectors of UN stamps? Put them on eBay, and hopefully eBay will find them for you. But I would say don't buy your ticket to Florida this winter until those stamps sell, because they probably won't sell.
Okay. And then Diane was also asking if unused stamp books have any value.
Now, I'm not sure what Diane means by books. Is she talking reference books or booklets of stamps? If she's talking physical stamps, everything goes back to the fact, if it's not canceled, it's still usable. But if she means a different kind of book, maybe clarify in another chat.
Oh, I see. And Robert did give us a clarification about the zip books. Mr. Zip, UE zip codes in a corner.
Zip codes, if I'm not mistaken, came out in the 60s. I mean, it seems like I was a kid when the zip code came out. So it sounds like what he's referring to is some early books that had stamps with mentioning the zip. To me, I wouldn't waste my time unless it's something I'm not aware of, Robert. I would probably use them for postage if I could, but my advice is either to go to eBay and see what they're selling for on eBay, or go to Google Images to see if you can find the exact book that you're talking about and see what that book is selling for.
Oh, and Diane is clarifying, she meant when she was asking about unused stamp books, she meant a booklet of stamps that you've purchased at the post office.
Again, as long as they're not canceled, you can use them. I don't care if there's any glue or not. There's no glue, use that glue stick.
Okay.
I swear, I love not paying the post office for stamps. I get them out of the collections I buy. So, I mean, I give that advice to a lot of people. If you have the stamp collection, it's not worth much money. You could sell it to me for 25 bucks, or you could keep it and use the postage for the next 5 years. You use the postage. I sometimes do mass mailings, and instead of going to the post office and paying 73 cents for forever stamps, I'll put in 325s because I've got a million used 25-cent sheets that I can still use for postage. So it takes up more room on an envelope, but I'm not putting money out of my pocket.
All right. A few more questions have popped in. So Jill is asking, are mint sheets worth anything?
Mint sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on what he's got. I mean, if Joe has a mint sheet of forever stamps, they're worth today's postage value. If Joe has a mint sheet of Ben Franklin, U.S. Scott's #1 stamps, it would be worth tens of thousands of dollars if they were mint unused stamps. So it all depends on the specific stamp and the condition. A sheet of Elvis stamps, 50 Elvis stamps, everybody kept their Elvis stamps. I still use Elvis stamps, the 29-cent Elvis stamps, I still use them for general postage. There's so many of them out there. They don't carry any premium price as far as I'm concerned.
Let's see what else. Theta is asking if you do a presentation like this on coins, US coins.
I sure do. We do coins and currency. We have a dozen of these programs dealing with the House and State Content Series. We do one on coins and currency. We do one on dealing with household and estate books, household and estate furniture. We do another one on sterling silver, silver plate, and pewter. We do another one on jewelry. We do another one on glassware, china, figurines. What we tried to do is come up with a program for most of the things we've seen over and over again that people have and they just don't know what to do with, like the stamp thing. So, like I said at the beginning, guys, I did not guarantee I was going to make you an expert in stamps because I'm not an expert after all the years I've been doing this. But I hope you know more now than you did at 7 o'clock when we started this program. If you do, I did my job.
I think that's pretty much all of the pertinent questions. The only other one was Joe was asking around 710, how did you learn about your experience with stamps?
How do I learn about what?
Your experience with stamps.
Trial and error. I made mistakes. I lost money. I told you I bought those stupid UN stamps thinking I was buying US stamps. You make that mistake once, you don't make it again. And I'm still learning. I just bought this huge collection. I'm amazed how little stamps are worth because to me they're just so interesting. They're amazing. But not a whole lot of people find stamps interesting. I do. Just a simple thing like look at this. The stamp that I'm looking at here is the Queen Victoria Black Penny. Okay. Well, I can date this in 1841, and I can also tell you where the stamp was on the sheet, because these sheets had like 20 stamps across and 30 stamps down, or something like that. So this number right here, M, means it was in the mth row horizontally, and the H means it was in the H row vertically. So you could tell exactly where the stamp was on the original sheet that was printed in 1840. And then in 1841, with the red pennies, they replaced these stars with the same letters here, but in reverse. So the other one would have had an H here and an M there. So you know that was after 1847, and they did that to prevent forgeries and frauds. Believe it or not, there were even crooks back then.
The only other question that I think I'll put to you is Susan was asking if there is a handout that you include.
There is not. I don't give out handouts.
Okay.
Just if I was in person, it'd be a different story.
Yeah.
Uh, but what I would say to the person who asked about the coins, if you guys are interested in a coin program or any of those others, talk to Marty, talk to the library, have them bring us back. I love this group, man. We had 90 some people at the peak tonight, and your library does better marketing their programs than almost every other library I deal with. So congratulations.
Thank you. Well, we are so happy to have you here, Mike. This was really fascinating. Like I said, I didn't know anything about stamp collection, and I feel like I learned a lot. So thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who attended. Please keep an eye on our calendar because we are constantly trying to keep things flowing and have all new presentations available. So, like Mike said, reach out to us, send feedback, and Mike, we're just so grateful to have you here tonight.
Hey, guys, thanks all for coming out. Marty, thank you in the library for having me back. This is my fourth program in the last 4 months. I hope you bring me back again.
Absolutely. So yeah, keep an eye on chelmsfordlibrary.org and Mike's website. I put it in the chat as well.
Good night, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.